The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. The Shadow of War. The world was changing, and Leo Sokolov felt the oppressive weight of that change. In Krompichi, the air was thick with unease, a reflection of the Slovakian National Party's troubling alignment with Nazi Germany during WWW. This party, which Leo had once believed in, now echoed the fascist rhetoric, leaving Jewish families like his own vulnerable to the regime's cruel policies. Leo's family sat in their living room, the government's decree demanding a child from each Jewish family to labor for the German war effort spread out before them. His sister Gita, whom Leo cherished deeply, sat sewing quietly, her presence a silent pillar of strength. It was for her and his family that Leo made his decision. "I'll go," he declared, a resolve in his voice that belied the terror within. "Max has a family. They cannot take him." His mother's tearful eyes met his, a silent exchange of sorrow and understanding. The following day, Leo departed for Prague, his heart laden with the possibility of never returning. The journey to Auschwitz was a visceral nightmare. The stench of fear mingled with the odor of too many bodies pressed together in the cattle car. The clanking of the train's wheels was a grim harbinger of the fate that awaited them. Upon arrival, the finality of the doors slamming shut extinguished any lingering hope. "Work will make you free," the commandant proclaimed, a hollow promise that fell on the ears of the despondent. Yet, Lale held onto a sliver of hope, the hope of reuniting with Gita. Papon, the camp's tattooist, saw something in Leo, a resilience that stood out even in the bleakest of places. "You have a choice," Papon offered one evening, the flickering light casting shadows on their solemn faces. "Become the tattooer. It could save your life." With trembling hands, Leo accepted the needle from Papon. He despised the very idea of branding his fellow prisoners, but he knew refusal meant another, perhaps less compassionate, would take his place. "I'll do it," he whispered, the decision fueled by love for Gita and a determination to protect his own. Assuming the role of the tattooer granted Leo a modicum of freedom and extra provisions, which he used to aid those around him, including ensuring better conditions for Gita. Each number he inked onto the skin of another was a mark against his soul, yet he found ways to resist, organizing clandestine football matches, subtly altering tattoos to save lives. These acts of defiance were his silent rebellion, a testament to his enduring humanity. As the war's shadow stretched over Auschwitz, Leo Sokolov clung to hope and to love. A love that ultimately led him to a new beginning in Melbourne with Gita, where they could embrace the freedom they had longed for. The tattooer. Lele stood in the shadow of the barracks, the cold air biting at his skin. He watched as a line of new prisoners shuffled forward, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. Among them, a young girl caught his eye, her dark hair a stark contrast against the snow. She couldn't have been more than 18, and her eyes met his with a silent plea. Papon nudged him forward. "It's time," he said gruffly. Lale nodded and began his work. The girl in front of him extended her arm. She whispered a plea, and he focused on the task, the numbers taking form on her skin. She offered a small, brave smile, a moment of connection in a world that had stripped them of their identities. The prisoners knew of the tattooer, the man who could get things. He was a lifeline in a place where hope was a rare commodity. The SS guards kept a watchful eye on Leo. They respected and feared his influence. He balanced his desire to help with the need to survive. The tattooer continued his work, marking his fellow prisoners and using his position to aid them. Each number was a life, a story, a heartbeat in the darkness. Lai would do everything in his power to keep those hearts beating, even if it meant bearing the burden of the tattooer. Bonds of ink and love. In the heart of Auschwitz, where despair often drowned out the faintest whispers of hope, Leo Sokolov, the camp's tattooist, found a rare kind of solace in Gita, a girl with eyes that seemed to defy the surrounding dark. Their bond, formed under the most harrowing of circumstances, was a silent rebellion against the cruelty they were forced to endure. One day, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the camp, Leo spotted Gita standing alone after her friends had dispersed. He approached her cautiously, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and longing. "Here," Lele whispered, extending a piece of bread towards her. "Take this." Gita's eyes widened, a glimmer of surprise flickering within them. "I can't," she murmured, glancing nervously around. "They'll see." "No one's watching. Please. It's yours," Lael insisted, pressing the bread into her hand. Gita hesitated for a moment before accepting the bread. Before she could say anything, another voice called out from behind, "Her name is Gita." And just like that, she was whisked away, leaving Lael alone with the echo of her name. In the days that followed, Leah and Gita found fleeting moments to connect. They exchanged secret glances and subtle nods, each one a precious thread weaving together the tapestry of their bond. During one such stolen moment, Lele waited for Gita outside the administration building. As she emerged, he gently took her arm, guiding her to a hidden corner where they could speak without fear of prying eyes. "Gita, I've been so worried about you," Lael said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm all right, Lael," Gita replied, her voice laced with a courage she didn't feel. "As long as we have these moments, I can bear it." Lael's eyes searched hers, finding the resolve that had kept them both alive. "We'll get through this, Gita, together." Their meetings were brief and fraught with danger, but each one fortified their resolve to survive. Lele, through his position, had managed to establish a discreet network with some of the workers, which allowed him to occasionally secure extra rations and medicine. He knew the risks, but the thought of Gita's well-being overshadowed the fear of punishment. One evening, as they huddled together, Lael's eyes conveyed a promise. "One day we'll leave this place, and I'll give you a proper home." Tears brimmed in Gita's eyes as she nodded. "For now, this," she gestured to the space between them, "is enough." Their love, solidified through shared struggles, became a beacon of hope. In a world stripped of humanity, Lael and Gita's bond was a testament to the enduring power of love and the unyielding spirit of the human heart. A clandestine network. In the heart of Auschwitz, where hope seemed as distant as the free world beyond the barbed wires, Leo Sokolov, the camp's tattooist, was brewing a silent revolution. His attached bag, a symbol of his unique status, was more than just a carrier of needles. It was a vessel of life, filled with contraband that could mean the difference between life and death for many. One brisk morning, as the sun barely rose above the horizon, Lael made his way to the administration office. His heart pounded against his chest, not just from the cold, but from the weight of the task ahead. He collected his supplies, his eyes always searching, always calculating. Today he was collecting more than just supplies, he was collecting hope. "Remember, not a word to anyone," whispered Pepin, his mentor, as he handed Lael a small package wrapped in brown paper. "This is more valuable than any jewel we've ever handled." Lele nodded, tucking the package into his bag. With the package secured, he made his way to the women's compound, his mind racing with plans. As he passed through the gates, he caught a glimpse of Gita. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, a silent message of courage and a promise of survival passed between them. He wanted to run to her, to hold her, but that would have to wait. There was work to be done. In the privacy of his workspace, Lael carefully opened the package. Inside were several small vials of penicillin, a treasure more precious than gold in this place of death. He knew the risks. Getting caught meant certain death, but the thought of saving lives, perhaps even Gita's, spurred him on. That evening, as the prisoners returned from their labor, Leo waited by the fence, his eyes scanning the crowd for Victor, the local worker who had become an unlikely ally. Their exchange was swift, a handshake that passed more than just pleasantries. Each item exchanged was a lifeline for someone in need. Later, in the dim light of the barracks, Leo sat with a group of prisoners, his hands deftly dividing the food into smaller portions. "Take this," he said, passing a piece of chocolate to a young girl. "Share it with the others, but be discreet." The girl nodded, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. As the days turned into weeks, Leo's network grew. His attache bag carried messages, medicine, and small comforts that reminded the prisoners they were still human. And with each act of defiance, each clandestine exchange, the bonds between them strengthened, a clandestine network of hope in a place designed to extinguish it. For Gita, for himself, for all of them, he would continue to fight, one silent act of rebellion at a time. Acts of defiance. In the heart of Auschwitz, where despair often took hold, Leo Sokolov stood as a beacon of quiet rebellion. His role as the Tattooist granted him a unique position, one he used not for personal gain, but to weave a clandestine network of aid and hope. One crisp morning, as the camp stirred to life, Leo met with Victor at the main compound gates. "Be careful, Leo," Victor whispered, his eyes darting around nervously. Lele nodded. "I will. And thank you." Later, in the seclusion of the women's compound, Gita smiled, a rare and precious sight. "You too, Leo. We need you." These moments of kindness, these small acts of defiance, they were what kept the flame of hope alive in a place designed to extinguish it. Amidst the shadow of war and the specter of death, Leo Sokolov chose to act, to defy, to love. It was these acts of defiance that carved a path to a future where he and Gita could live freely, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The emotional toll. Lale sat on the cold, hard floor of the barracks, his back against the wall. The dim light flickered, casting shadows across the room. He thought of his family, their memory a constant presence in his mind, though he no longer needed the photograph to feel their closeness. The sound of boots interrupted his thoughts. An SS guard entered, and the men tensed. Lele stood, joining the others as they prepared for the day ahead. Outside, the air was heavy with the smell of smoke. Lele took his place in line, his number ready. The guard's voice rang out, each call a stark reminder of their reality. That evening, Leo lay on his bunk, the day's events replaying in his mind. He thought of the young boy from earlier, his fear palpable, and for a moment Leo allowed himself to remember home. The cries of the night surrounded him, but Leo closed his eyes, seeking respite and sleep. He awoke to another day, the memory of Gita's strength and love, a silent companion, fueling his resolve to survive, to hold on to hope amidst the darkness. His spirit remained unbroken, his heart steadfast to the silent anthem of hope and love. Unbroken Spirits. The sun had barely risen, but Auschwitz was already alive with the sound of guards barking orders. Lele, his number inked forever on his arm, stood in line for roll call, his eyes searching for a familiar face. He found her, Gita, a few rows ahead, and their eyes met for a fleeting moment, a silent exchange of strength. "Keep moving, Sokolov," a guard shouted, his voice cutting through the cold air. Leo's hands were raw, but he lifted another burden, his mind drifting to Gita. They had shared stolen moments, whispers of dreams and promises of a future together. Those dreams buoyed him now, giving him the strength to endure. That night, as explosions echoed in the distance, Leo lay awake, his thoughts on Gita. It was a dangerous game, but love made risk-takers of them all. The next day, Leo stood before the commandant, his heart pounding. He had been caught with contraband, and the punishment would be severe. But he held his ground, his spirit unbroken. The commandant looked at him, and Lael walked free, his body bruised, but his will intact. In the evenings, Lael and the other prisoners would gather, sharing stories that were a balm for their weary souls. They spoke of the lives they would lead once they were free, of the people they would become. Through it all, Lael's love for Gita remained a beacon. He clung to the hope of their reunion, to the belief that their spirits would remain unbroken, no matter what horrors they faced. And so, amidst the brutality and despair, Lael's unbroken spirit carried him through, a silent promise to Gita, to himself, that they would survive, that love would prevail. A new dawn in Melbourne. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow over the bustling city of Melbourne. Lele and Gita Sokolov stood outside their new home, a modest but welcoming place that symbolized the start of their new life together. They had arrived in this foreign land with little more than each other. Lale turned to Gita, his eyes reflecting the same resilience that had carried them through the darkest times. "We made it, my love," he said, taking her hand. "A new beginning." Gita smiled, her heart full of hope. "Yes, we did. And we will make it here too, together." Their first challenge was to navigate the unfamiliar streets and customs of Melbourne. They walked through the city, absorbing the sights and sounds of their new home. Leia's entrepreneurial spirit soon led him to a small warehouse for sale. "This is it, Gita. This will be the start of our business," he declared confidently. Gita, ever supportive, nodded. "We will create something beautiful here." As they worked to establish their textile business, Lael's charm and Gita's creativity quickly won them friends and loyal customers. One evening, as they were closing the shop, a young couple walked in. "We heard about your store from our friends," the woman said. "They told us your story, and we had to come see for ourselves." Lale and Gita exchanged a look of pride. Their story was becoming known, and with it, their business was growing. Months turned into years, and the Sokolovs' business flourished. Gita's designs became sought after, and Lael's fabrics were known for their quality. Their home was filled with laughter, friends, and eventually, the cries of their newborn son, Gary. As Gary grew, he learned of his parents' past, not through sorrowful tales, but through stories of courage and love. Layla would often say, "Our past has shaped us, but it does not define us." In Melbourne, under the southern sky, Lael and Gita Sokolov found more than just a new dawn. They found a place where their love and dreams could soar.